Well, Jay and Warren, thank you very much for coming by, and thank you for the facilities, Warren. You two are unique. Even though you're in different spheres, you've reached a level of success almost legendary. What did you do? What made you different? Warren, we'll start with you, because they're investing. There are a lot of bright people. They've all claimed to read Graham and Dodd. They all claim to be disciplined, and yet there's only one Warren Buffett.
Well, I was lucky that I got started early. I mean, it always helps if you get started early. And my dad happened to be in the investment business, so I would go down to his office on Saturdays. And so at age probably 7 or something, I started reading these books that were around the place. And so I had a 15-year jump on many people in a sense, and that helped a lot. And I was always fascinated by it. I mean, I knew what I wanted to do early, and I think that's a huge advantage too. And then you don't need a lot of brains in this business. I mean, I've always said if you got an IQ of 160, give away 30 points to somebody else, because you don't need it in investments. What you do need is emotional stability. You have to be able to think independently, and you have to be when you come to a conclusion, you have to really not care what other people say, and just follow the facts and follow your reasoning. And that's tough for a lot of people. That part I think I was just lucky with. I was born that way.
In terms of emotions, it's a truism that in investing, emotions are your enemy.
Absolutely.
That when the market's good, if you feel good, don't. If you feel bad, you should probably do it.
Right.
But how did you? What was that extra thing where so many will acknowledge that, and yet we saw in the current crisis they panicked while you went into seemingly potential disasters like GE and Goldman Sachs.
Yeah. I can't really tell you the answer. I mean, I didn't learn it in school or anything. It never bothered me if people disagreed with what I thought, as long as I felt I knew the facts. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things I don't know a thing about. I just stay away from those. So I stay within what I call my circle of competence. You know, Tom Watson said it best. He said, I'm no genius, but I'm smart in spots, and I stay around those spots. Well, I try and stay around those spots, and I just don't have a problem if somebody says, you're wrong on something. I go back and look at the facts, and I think that really is much more important, frankly, than having a few points of IQ or having an extra course or two in school or anything of the sort. You need emotional stability.
And so in terms of people who are not even in the business, if they, I think we were talking when we had dinner the other day about how in tennis, most of us are never going to get to Wimbledon. But if we just focus, as somebody once said, get the ball over the net. Don't try to be fancy about it. Just get the ball over the net. You'll do fine.
Yeah, and that's a little bit like, I've got this rule, the first rule is don't lose, and the second rule is never forget the first rule. So it really isn't so much having a lot of brilliant decisions. It's just not really having some terrible ones. And frankly, I did learn from Ben Graham how to avoid ever having any disasters in investments. It wasn't that you were going to come up with the very smartest thing, but if you never have any significant losses, some singles and doubles will produce a lot of runs before you get through.
Who was Ben Graham? He was your primary mentor, model?
He was a wonderful man, and he was my professor at Columbia. I read his book when I was 19 at the University of Nebraska, and I'd started investing when I was 11, and I started reading about it when I was like 7. So I'd gone through I read every book in the Omaha Public Library that there was by the time I was 12 on investing and stock market. And I had a lot of fun, but I never really found out, I never got grounded in anything. And it was entertaining, but it wasn't going to be profitable. And then I read Graham's book, The Intelligent Investor, when I was at the University of Nebraska. And that just opened the whole thing up to me. Yeah, and I named my oldest son is named Howard after my dad, Graham Buffett, and he was a marvelous man. Never expected anything from me in return. He just did all these things for younger people.
You have just a couple of quick examples of the things that he did that you will look back on? It's one thing to read something, but quite another to see it in action.
Well, but what he did was he got me thinking, not as a stock as something with a ticker symbol that wiggles around and that that you look at charts on or anything. He taught me to think about it as part of a business, and that was vital. And he taught me not to really pay any attention to stock market fluctuations except when they were working in my favor, so that not to get elated because something had gone up or depressed because it went down. So if I knew the facts on something and it went down, I bought more of it, you know, and because I looked at it as a business. And then he taught that famous lesson about a margin of safety, that you don't drive a truck that weighs 9,900 pounds across a bridge that says limit 10,000 pounds, because you can't be that sure about it. If you see something like that, you go down a little further down the road and you find one that says limit 20,000 pounds, and that's the one you drive across.
So he, in effect, taught you that stocks weren't just numbers. Numbers were shorthand for flesh and blood businesses.
Absolutely.
And very easy to overlook.
I've never forgotten it.
Jay, you are in a business that's perhaps even more competitive, because there's probably not a young person in the country who at some point in their lives wants to be an entertainer, a star.
Right.
And you've not only have done it, but you've done it consistently. And even though you're only 40 going on 41, in that business, that's almost like 80 in Warren's world. It's tough to do more than one or two. Looking back, what were the things that broke you out of the pack in the most dramatic way possible?
As I was listening to him, I just hear all the similarities and all the things in what he's saying, right? Because if you don't look at it as tickers and things like that, you're really just searching for the truth within, you know, all that. And within all the numbers and all the chaos, you're just searching for the truth, right? And that's the key to being a recording artist, right? You're telling your story or finding your truth at the moment. You know, mine's a little opposite from Warren, because I started a little later. My first album didn't come out till I was 26, so I had a bit more maturity of where I was at. It's my first album had all these, you know, emotions and complexities and layers to them that a typical hip-hop album didn't have, because, you know, we were making it at 16, 17 years old. It wasn't enough wealth of experience to share with the world. So at 26, I had been through so many different things. I had so much wealth to share, you know, with the world at that time. And from that starting point, I've never forgotten those things. Like you said, I mean, you never forget those true things that you stick to, your basic things that you know, make you successful. And for me, it's that truth, finding that truth, the truth of the moment of where I am at the time. You know, not trying to cater to a certain demographic, you know, or, you know, not being something I'm not driving a truck over a bridge 10,000, you know, the whole thing. Like, there's so many similarities in what he was just saying.
Now, in terms of a mentor, you mentioned at a young age, you got a love of words. How you meant, and before we recorded, you mentioned a 6th grade teacher brought that out in you that's lived a lifetime.
Yeah, I was telling you early, like in you know, our classrooms where we grew up. I grew up in Marcy Projects in Brooklyn, and you know, our classrooms were flooded. You know, so it's very difficult for teachers to give you like one-on-one attention. You know, and there's just one 6th grade teacher. Her name was Miss Loudon. You know, she must have saw something in me, and she gave me this attention, and she gave me this love for words. You know, it's funny how it works. You know, it's, you know, worked for me to this day. But just a little bit of attention, you know. You know, she also took us on a field trip to her house, you know, which opened me up to the world. You know, my neighborhood had been my world. It's the only thing I had seen, you know. I just, you know, saw a whole different world. My imagination grew from there. You know, I wanted that. I aspired to have that, you know. The small thing, she had like a ice thing on her refrigerator. You know, you push the ice and the water come down. I was really amazed by that. I was like, I want one of those. It's true.
Now, you also, even though you didn't record your first album till you were 26, you, in effect, were writing music in your own mind.
Yeah, I was around music my whole life. My mom and pop had like a huge record collection, so I started out listening to music early on, and I would just write music, and you know, I just had a love from it, you know, from there. I didn't get to it, you know. I got caught into my neighborhood and my surroundings, but I've always taken it with me, and I've always went back to it, and then just got to a point where it was like, make this decision. This is something you really love and you love to do. You know, it's time to really focus on it and to get serious about it, and, you know, give it your all. And once I did that, it was no looking back from there.
And you were able to overcome where you grew up. As you once put it, you saw what happened and things like drug dealing, where the life would end, and you decided at some point, I'm not going there.
Yeah, just, I mean, you know, those sort of decisions that happen in, you know, many of our lives, you know, when we're faced with those fork, you know, the fork in the road moments, you know, and I was around people and I was seeing people, really genuinely nice people, going away for 13 years and, you know, all these, you know, unjust and Rockefeller laws. And, you know, I was just around that so much that I would just told myself, man, I have to make a decision at some point. And, you know, I made this decision to, you know, focus on music, which was my love, you know, and it worked out.
Consistency. You know, people have a love of music. They may do 1 or 2 or 3 albums, and then for some reason they fade away. That hasn't happened to you.
I think, again, it goes back to a bit of what Warren was saying as well. Like, it's the discipline as well, the discipline to not get caught up in the moment. You know, music is like stocks too. You know, there's the hot thing of the moment. You know, there's this hot electro sound or the hot auto-tune voice or the hot whatever's new and exciting. And, you know, people tend to make emotional decisions based on that. They don't stick with what they know. This is who I am. This is, you know, this is what I do. And then they, you know, jump on this next hot thing, and, you know, it's not for you. So for me, just having the discipline and having the confidence that in who I am, you know, and if I go into a studio and if I find my truth of the moment, there are a number of people in the world that can relate to what I'm saying, and it's gonna buy into what I'm doing. You know, not because it's the new thing of the moment, but because it's my genuine emotions. It's how I feel. It's how I articulate the world. And, you know, just having the discipline to just, you know, be yourself.
Because you once said, as an artist, you are fighting against everything that's new and everyone's fascinations with new things.
Yeah, shiny things.
And
people fall in love with shiny things.
So in essence, as you grow older, you bring an audience with you because the topic of your music grows with you.
Right. Right.
So I mean, never stays, doesn't go stale.
Yeah, because for hip hop is like 30 years old. Like, hip hop is fairly a new genre of music. So we've never seen, you know, the maturation of hip hop, you know, in this sort of way. This never happened before. You know, people would get a certain age and still try to pinpoint this, you know, young demographic, because hip hop was a young man sport. But, you know, people that listen to hip hop when they're 18, they still gonna like hip hop when they're 28. It's just that the voices in hip hop are not speaking directly to them anymore. Weren't. You know, they weren't. They were speaking to a 18-year-old demographic. You know, so, you know, you're 28, you don't have anything to listen to because no one's relating to you. So, you know, my whole thing was, I'm not gonna do that. You know, I'm just gonna make, you know, the music that I love to make and that I want to make, and I'm gonna mature with my music. And, you know, luckily for me, it was the right decision.
When did you realize that not only did you have this ability with music and not to get stale, but recognize too, you have to be treated also, even though you love it, as a business, so that you don't end up, as so many do, they lose everything they have, they're in effect indentured to companies, and they're not masters of their fate.
Yeah, that was the greatest trick in music that people ever pulled off, is to convince artists that you can't be an artist and make money. I think the people that were making millions actually set that. I think they set that whole thing up. You know, it was almost like shameful, like especially in rock and roll. You had to pretend that, you know, you got these millionaire guys who had to pretend as if they weren't successful at all, or it would be like a detriment to their career. You know, hip hop from the beginning, you know, it was always been aspirational. You know, just always broke that thing. You know, that thing that an artist can't think as well. And I think at the end of the day, as long as when you separate the two and you're not making music with business in mind,